And good morning. We're in 2 Samuel chapter 7. We're looking at a king of promise. It was about 42 weeks ago that we started, and we started with Adam and Eve and looked at creation and how Adam and Eve then fell into sin. And we talked about that the Lord was the one who came into the garden, and he promised a rescue, but not only a rescue, but a restoration, a restoring of all that Adam and Eve had lost. They lost their walk with each other. They lost their walk with God. But they lost their right to be image bearers to reign on the earth. And so God came into the garden and he said, one day, I'm going to drive a stake through the serpent's head. So he showed what he believes about rebellion, that it needs to be crucified. But he showed what he also believes about people, that they're going to be bought back at his expense. That's what grace is. It's God's riches at Christ's expense. And so that stake that he said he would drive through the serpent's head was the cross. And so then he began to make promises of a reigning king who would be on the universal throne over the heavens and the earth. Not just a throne on the earth, but a throne on the earth and the heavens. And this king will come through the line of David. Now, David hadn't received that yet, but we know it. And so God came to Abraham and he began to make promises to Abraham. There was certainly a touch of it with Noah and with some other people, but it was with Abraham that God said, let me tell you more about the Messiah. And he began to make him promises. Now, if you want to take your note sheet and just write down some of these words, they're not on your screen, but I think they're important for where we are in 2 Samuel 7. One of them is people. So just say people. He said, I'm going to give a people to my son. The father promised a group of people to the son. And so he told Abraham, he said, I'm going to make you a great nation and many people will come from you. So from the very beginning, when he begins to talk about the Messiah in detail, he says, I'm going to claim a people back for myself that are in rebellion against me, that are enemies against me. I'm going to turn their hearts towards me, and those people will be mine, and they will reign on the earth. And then he promised a land, so let's just write the word place. He promised a place. So everybody say place. So he said, I'm going to give a place to my people. Now, to one degree, to Israel, it's very specific. He actually told them how far they would go to each river, to each mountain, which land they'll take, and they've not got that yet. It's amazing that Israel was made a nation in the late 40s. No other nation has ever had this happen. They were dispersed all over the earth. God brought them back. They became a nation. And they still have promises. But that place for them was just a beginning, because he said, sooner or later, you're going to reign on the earth, all the earth, and you'll reign on the heavens and the earth with my people. And we've been grafted into Israel. If you're a Gentile, you've been grafted into the promises of Israel and been given much more in Christ. But he promised his people a place. Then he told him, he said, I'm going to make you a great name. So he said, I'm going to give you a purpose. So just write the word purpose. Everybody say purpose. So he got a people, he's got a place, and he's got a purpose for us. He said, I'm going to give you a purpose. I'm going to make you a great name, and you will go across the earth and glorify my name. And then he told him, I'll be with you. So he promised his presence. So everybody say presence. Now, it's not the presents you get at Christmas. It's his presence that he's given with you. He said, I will be with you. He told Abraham, I will be with you and your descendants. I will always be with you. I'll never forsake you. You began to hear some of the terms and some of the phrases that Jesus said when he came to earth. Started all the way back to Abraham. I'm going to grab a people. I'm going to give them a place. I'm going to give them a purpose. And I'm going to give them my presence. And he said, anybody who curses you, I'll curse. So he said, I'm going to give you my power. So just say power. So he says, I'm going to give you my power. You will not walk in your own strength. You're not going to be trying to do your best. I will empower you, and it'll be my power which you do this. And anybody who curses you, I'll curse, and you'll have power to go all the way across the earth. And with that, he gave them peace. He said, I'm going to put your enemies aside. I'm going to overtake your enemies. So let's say peace. So you should have right now written down people, place, purpose, presence, power, and peace. So he said, I'm going to give you my peace. When Jesus came, he said, I don't give you peace like the world gives. It goes up and down whether you have a good day or not. I give you my peace that I've had for all eternity. I'm going to place it in your heart. It does not depend on circumstances or people. And all of this, he said, I will do so that all the families of the earth will be blessed. And he kept saying, I, all the way to Abraham. So the last one is passion. He said, I'm going to give you my passion. I'm going to do it by my passion. So let's just say passion. So this is what the Lord said when he came. He said, the zeal of the Lord, the passion of the Lord. You'll see it translated zeal or passion. He said, the zeal of the Lord has done this. In other words, I didn't do this, Jesus said, on my own passion. I didn't do this on my own strength. I didn't do this because I came up with it. The Father sent me. And that's what he said to Abraham. I will bless all the families on the earth through you because I'm passionate to glorify my name. So there's a people, there's a place, there's a purpose, there's a presence, there's a power, there's a peace, and there's a passion. Now, that's what you're going to see over and over as you go through the Old Testament and into the New. You're going to see this promise of God saying, I created you, I know the fall came, but I'm the rescuer, and I'm going to restore, and everything I promised is going to be restored. So in this chapter, one commentator says this is the most important chapter in all the New Testament because this is everything that we've been looking for. This is an important chapter. Nancy Guthrie says this, the reality of all that history has been driving toward is the Son of David on the throne of the universe. The Son of David has been promised to fulfill everything we just talked about, that he one day, the Son of David, will reign on the throne of the universe. Now, it's been about 900 to 1,000 years from Abraham to David. So God has waited a period of time to say, okay, now I want to give you greater fulfillment of what's coming with the Messiah. That's how important chapter 7 is because God reaffirms his covenant. He says, my covenant still stands. So when you get to chapter 7, the first few verses, first 7 verses, David walks out on the balcony. And he's got this great palace that's been built for him, and he looks at the tabernacle. So they're still using the tabernacle, which is a big tent. They've been on the move in the wilderness and from place to place, so they take it up, they take it down. Finally, it's kind of stationary, but it's still a big tent. And he's on his balcony, and he looks at it, and he says, why should I be in this big palace and God should have a tent? He says, God, I'm going to do something for you. I'm going to build you a place. And God says, no, you're not. No, you're not. Not only are you not going to build a place, but you need to get rid of that attitude. You don't do something for me. You receive something from me. David needs to hear this because Bathsheba's coming right around the corner. This is a loving, grace-filled chapter, but it is a loving warning to David. Stop trying. Stop telling me what you're going to do for me. Stop your work. Stop your rituals. Stop your working to be good. Stop all that. You're not going to do something for me. You need to receive something from me. Look at Luke 12. When Jesus comes on your screen, Luke 12:32, he said, fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good delight, satisfaction, pleasure to give you the kingdom. It satisfies the Father to give you the kingdom. You don't have to work for the kingdom. That's the same idea that we see here when God says, no, you're not going to build a temple for me. Don't do something for me. Receive something from me. So number one, here's what he promises. On your note sheet, you'll see it. God promises his people a forever rest. He promises them an eternal rest through David. He promises us a rest that starts when we're born again. When you come to know Christ and you put your faith in him and you surrender your life to him, you enter the rest of God, the peace of God. You starts right then and it goes on forever. Every word in that sentence is important. You see, it's God, not someone else. It's a promise that God makes that he always keeps. He says, if I don't keep my promises, I will cease to exist. That's how important they are. I promise you. It's to his people. It's not to everybody on the earth. Matter of fact, Jesus said when he got here, it was announced of him that it's to his people have peace. Not for everybody. It's his people will have a peace through him. That's what the confirmation is here. I want you to know, he says, if you enter into me, into my rest, you will have a forever, eternal rest. Now, this word rest means peace. If you just want to write some synonyms down, it's translated different ways in the Bible. It means peace. It means to cease striving or to cease trying. It means safety, to be in a safe place with God. Your sins are covered. The way he looks at you, the way he views you, you're safe with God. It has the idea of confidence, that you're in confidence with God. You're assured of who God is and his promises. Sometimes the writer will say, we're going to enter into the refuge of God, the rest of God, cleft for me, we sing. He said, you can be confident and rest in him right now. And it also has the idea of being satisfied, like someone would eat a good meal and you'd go lie down and you go get in your easy chair and you turn the TV on and you have no idea what you're watching because in 5 minutes you're asleep. It's that kind of idea that you'd be full, you'd be complete. You'd be satisfied. This is a big deal. This is, matter of fact, everything you struggle with and I struggle with. Anxiety, worry, fear, unforgiveness, inadequacy, trying to prove ourselves, trying to earn love, trying to get somebody to love us. Everything you face on this earth is covered right here in the peace of God, the rest of God. Look at it. Cease striving, peace, safety, confidence, satisfaction. Like a cat that would get on your lap and lie down and it does its little bread thing. It kneads the bread, whatever it does with the paws. I don't know why they do that, but they do it on your skin. And then they turn around and then they lie down and then they begin to purr and they rest on you. He said, you can rest in the Lord. You don't have to prove anything to him or anybody else anymore. You don't have to try to get somebody's love. You don't have to give yourself away to be loved. What he declares about you is true. Somebody else might declare that you're inadequate or you're not good enough or they don't need you anymore, but not with God. He said you're completely at rest in him. And he says to believe that is everything. And he said it is a forever rest. So here's what he's telling David. He's saying, David, you live in time and you live in eternity. You need to have both of them in mind. That forever rest starts right now when you're changed in Christ. It's a rest that's given to you now. You can start enjoying it now, today. You can be free from worry. You can be free from a bad conscience. You can be free from guilt and shame. You can be free from people-pleasing. You can be free from addiction. That's the idea here. It starts now. But it lasts throughout all eternity. In other words, it never ends and it only gets better. It's a forever rest. It's now. And so God tells him, here's my focus, David. Here's my focus with you. I want you to focus on what I've done, what I'm doing, and what I will do. What I've done, what I'm doing, what I will do. I don't need you to tell me what you're going to do for me. You're going to be a champion for me. You're going to work hard for me. I don't need any of that. I'm not a debtor to any man. It's what I've done, what I'm doing, and what I will do. Look at verse 16. If you got your Bible open, I just want to jump around here for a minute in this text because I want to emphasize the word forever. Verse 16, he said, your house and your kingdom shall endure before me, what? Forever. And your throne shall be established how long? Forever. So if you go through this text, that's what you're going to see over and over, the word forever. Forever, 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 forever. He mentions it over and over. He must want us to hear something. Look at verse 24. David's praying and thinking about what's all that's been promised. I'm going to skip some of the forevers, but he says, for you have established for yourself your people Israel as your own people forever. And you, O Lord, have become their God. Look down to verse 29. 29, therefore, may it please you as he begins to pray, and bless the house of your servant that it may continue how long? Forever. So David begins to pray what God promised him, and that's the way to pray, is pray off God's word. You pray off God's word, you'll never have anything, you'll never run out of anything to pray about, but you'll know how to pray. And he ends that sentence in 29, he says, may you be blessed forever. So this forever rest is promised to him. Now this is a big deal to Israel because they've been fighting battle after battle after battle after battle after battle. That's all we saw, right? All the way through the Judges. Fights after fights and surrendering to other nations and being taken over and being taken captivity. Finally, there's some peace and there's some rest there, and they've been fighting all these battles, and he says, I'm going to take care of all your battles and blow your socks off with a rest that you can't believe. So go back to verse 8. Let's go through the text a little bit. Chapter 7, verse 8, he promised this rest. Verse 8, he said, therefore, you shall say to my servant David. That's a great title. My servant David, God's servant David. You notice he mentions his name. You notice he's the Lord's servant. He don't have to serve anybody else. He don't have to be under anybody else. Nobody else is meant to be your Lord. They're not a good Lord. Nobody else is meant to be your master. Nobody else is meant to tell you if you're adequate or good enough. They're not good at that. He is the servant of the Lord. You notice it's my servant. This is a title of honor, relationship, dependence. This is a valuable term here. He says, thus says the Lord of hosts, I took you from the pasture. You might just want to underline I. I took you from the pasture. You were following the sheep, and I took you to be ruler over my people Israel. I did this. Here's what I've done. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I will do. Not to belabor the point, but you'll miss it if you don't understand the context. David goes out and says, I'm going to be a champion for God. I'm going to have long-term goals and vision for my church and my kingdom. And I'm going to do something great for God. And so he walks out and says, I'm going to do this for God. And God says, no, you're not. And stop talking that way. You don't need to do something for me. You need to receive something from me. Everybody got that? It's a pretty simple concept. It's just hard to live in, isn't it? He says, don't do for me, receive from me. I don't need you to do something for me. I don't need you to work hard for me. I don't need you to drive for me. I need you to depend on me. You need to depend on me. Learn to depend on me. Focus on what I've done, what I'm doing, what I will do, and you'll be okay. Verse 9, there it is again, I've been with you wherever you go. Wherever you've gone, I've been right there with you. Every battle you made it through, I got you through it. Every enemy that want to kill you, and I put him to death, I did that. Goliath, I did that. The stuff you've done, the kingdom expanding, I did that through you. Wherever you went, I, the Lord God, was there doing it in and through you. I cut off all your enemies before you. I will make you a great name like the names of the great men are on the earth. So he said, here's what I've did, here's what I'm doing, here's what I will do. He said, verse 8, I took you from the pasture, there's purpose. See those words again? I took you from the pasture to put you over a kingdom. I gave you purpose. The same is true for you. Wherever you are today, that's a part of God's purpose. Wherever he took you from the past, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and wherever you are now, that's a part of God's purpose. He wants to remind David, here's where you were, here's where you are. And that should be a great blessing to many of us. You look back at your life and you say, boy, I'm not arrived yet, but I'm certainly not the person I was 5 years ago. He says, David, remember what you were? You were out there, nobody wanted you. Your dad said, just go back to the sheep. Your brother said you're an arrogant man. And the king Saul said you're inadequate. And I went and grabbed you. And I changed you. And I put you over a people. I did that. I gave you a purpose. He said, I've been with you wherever you go. I gave you my presence, my very own presence, the presence of Almighty God that fills the heavens and the earth. I put my presence with you. And he said, verse 9, I cut off all your enemies and made you a great name. I gave you my peace from your enemies, and I gave you my power. There was nobody who could stand against you. No enemy is meant to stand against you or oversee you or have lordship over you. That's the same true of us. All of this is true for us. We're the sons of Abraham, the sons of David. We live in the son of David, Jesus. Genesis 12, on your screen, you'll notice that 900 years before this, about 900 to 1,000 years before this, he told Abraham, go to the land, there it is again, land, I'll show you. I'll make you a great nation, I'll bless you. I'll make your name great. Just exactly what he just said. And you shall be a blessing. The reason why you'll have a great name is because you'll be in me and you'll be a blessing to the people. So he is reiterating to David what he promised to Abraham. And hold on, because you're hearing some of this, but this is for you. Okay, and if this didn't happen, you wouldn't get any of it. We wouldn't have any of it. So God is saying, what I promised to Abraham, I'm now promising to you. But he says, wait. He says, hold on. I'm just getting started. So here's what happens. David goes out and says, I'm going to do something great for you. And God says, no, you're not. And he goes boom, 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 boom with promises. He says, I'm going to shower you with who I am, what I'm doing, what I'm done. He says, you know, the answer to stop trying is to walk in the grace and the promises of God. And he just showers him with what he's going to do. Go down back to verse 10. Verse 10, he said, also, that's not enough for you, David. I will appoint a place for my people Israel. I will plant them there that they may live in their own place, not to be disturbed again, nor will the wicked afflict them any more as formerly. Verse 11, even from that day I commanded judges to be over my people Israel. I will give you rest from your enemies. Underline that. I will give you rest from all your enemies. All your enemies. All. There will be not one enemy that will oversee you or control you if you'll depend on me and trust. There's that word rest. You can be assured in me. You can be confident in me. You can be at ease with me. You can be at peace with me. You can be satisfied within me. You can have victory within me. I will give you rest, not from some of your enemies, but from all of your enemies. Every single one of them. You say, does that include alcohol? Yes. Does that include porn? Yes. Does that include past mistakes, bad decisions? Yes. Does that include financial issues? Yes. He says, every single enemy will come under my feet, and because you're my son, I will do it for you. That's the promise. Verse 10, I'll appoint a place that my people will live. My people will be in the right place where I want them, and they will live there, and they will show who they are to the world. Reminds you of Genesis 15:18 on your screen. He says to Abraham, again, about 1,000 years earlier, on that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I'll give this land. So here it is that God is coming to David, and he's saying, David, this is now coming to fruition. It's coming true more than it ever has before. What I promised Abraham, I'm promising you, but I'm going to give you even more. In verse 11, he said, I'll give you rest from all your enemies. I mean, you just think about that, all your enemies. I just want to reemphasize that again. The peace, the confidence, the satisfaction, the assurance that you can have that all of your enemies must submit to Jesus Christ. They must all. There'll be a day when every knee shall bow to him. But right now, you have the authority and the ability to have everything bow to him that attacks you, that comes against you. Stand in it. Genesis 12:3, he says, I will bless those who bless you. He told Abraham, I'll curse those who curse you, and all the families of the earth will be blessed. There'll be not one enemy that will stand against you that I will not curse. They curse you, I'll curse them. I will put them out of their misery if I need to. I love that. I will defeat all of your enemies so that all the earth will be blessed. So here's the wrong question to ask God. I think we can assume this by now. What can I do for God? That's the wrong question. He just says, boom, saturates him with presence and promise after promise after promise. He says, it's not what you do for me. It's what I can do in through you. It's what I've done. It's what I'm doing. It's what I will do. In other words, God reverses it. He reverses the whole conversation. And he saturates David with his grace. And he says, David, you're living in the now and the forever. You better enjoy it and take it on and rest in me and be satisfied in me and cease striving and be confident in me. And Jesus would come. Another 1,000 years later. And he said, abide in me and let my word abide in you. Apart from me, you can do what? It's exactly what he's telling David. The God of Abraham is your God. The God of David is your God.
Jesus, who is Jehovah who saves, said the same words because God says the same thing yesterday, today, and forever. He's the same God. So he came and he comes to David and he meets him out on the balcony and says, let me be your satisfaction. Number two, God promises to build a forever house. So he says, I'm going to build you a forever rest and I'm going to build you a forever house. Now, house, if you want to write it down, means temple. It sometimes means building or temple, and sometimes it means dynasty. The house of David means the line of David, the descendants of David. He'll use that word. It means temple, it means building, but it means the line, the descendants. So he says, you're going to have a temple built, and you're going to have a dynasty built, and I'm going to build it. In other words, it won't say, David built this for God. It'll say, God built this for David and his people. It'll be reversed. Look at verse 11b, right in the middle of the text there. Verse 11, right in the middle. The Lord also declares to you, the Lord will make you a house. The Lord will make a house for you. The Lord will do it. He will make a house for you, a place of rest in a house, in a temple, in a dynasty. This temple will be built for God, for David, and for the people. Again, he says, I will do it. I wonder what he feels about, what he thinks about, what the Lord thinks about when people get on TV, especially, and they say, the Jimmy Jones ministry is coming to town. I was watching this week, I was watching these two people. One was an apostle, one was a prophet, one was a man, one was a woman, and they were given all these prophecies, and this man was supposedly one of the greatest things that ever happened, and he finished his teaching, and she looks at him and she says, your ministry, this was her words, your ministry has changed our life forever. Your ministry. The Jimmy Jones ministry. I'm just making that name up. If your name's Jimmy Jones, I'm sorry. So I just made that up. Jimmy Bob Jones. Jimmy Bob Jones ministry. I wonder what the Lord thinks about that. With murals of people on the walls and their names everywhere. I don't know. David comes out and he says, I'm going to have a great ministry for you and I'm going to do this for you. And he said, no, you're not. He said, no, you're not. You'll just lead people astray. He is lovingly blessing David, but he's lovingly warning him. Verse 12, when your days are complete and you lie down with your fathers, he said, by the way, you're going to die. I don't need your ministry because your ministry is going to die. And if ministry just dies with you, it just dies. And he says, David, I'm going to keep on going. So when you lie down with your fathers, I'm going to raise up a descendant. You notice that singular, descendant, one descendant. After you, he'll come forth from you, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house, there it is, a temple. And he'll do it for my name, and I will establish, and it can be for my name or in my name. I will do it in him, through him, for myself. I will establish the throne of his kingdom for how long? Forever. So now you see a dual prophecy. A dual prophecy means there's an immediate fulfillment and there's an ultimate fulfillment. And sometimes they are hundreds of years or thousands of years apart, and they look like two mountains that are close together. Like if you're at a distance and you see two mountains, they often could be 40 miles apart or longer. But they look an optical illusion. They look like they're right together. And he says there's an immediate fulfillment, but there's a long-term fulfillment. So Solomon is mentioned here. He's going to build a literal house. God's going to build a house through Solomon. It's going to be a temple. But 900 years later, when the Messiah comes, he will be the temple of God. You'll notice in verse 11, he says, I'll make you a house. That is the temple that Solomon's going to do. But you've got to remember the word dynasty. He said, I'm going to make you a dynasty. There's going to be a line of people come from you, and they're going to keep on going forever. And one of them will sit on the throne forever. He'll be on the throne forever. Forever. So 900 years later, Jesus will come, and he will say, I'm going to destroy this temple and raise it up. What? Remember? In 3 days. I'm going to destroy the temple and raise the temple, the ultimate temple, in 3 days. So this was prophesied 900 years before Jesus was ever born, that a temple would come and the temple would say it'll be destroyed and raised up. You'll notice in verse 12, he says, I'm going to raise up a descendant, singular. That's Solomon. That's Solomon to some degree, but he's talking about the son of David, Jesus. Verse 13, he says he's going to build a house. Solomon will be used to build the temple, but Jesus will build the temple. And he says, it's for my name. Jesus will continually say to people, I come in the name of the Father. I only do what the Father tells me to do. I only say what the Father tells me to say. And 13 ends with, this will be a forever throne. That means Jesus Christ will reign on the heavens and the earth forever, and it's coming soon. It's coming soon. Now, here's where it starts picking up for you and me. Look at Genesis 17:6 on your screen. He said, I will make a nation of you, and kings will come forward from you. So he told Abraham, I'm going to make a nation of you one day, and it'll be a great nation, but the thing is, kings will come from you. Solomon will come from you. David will come from you, but the King of Kings will come from your line. The greater fulfillment is Jesus. Genesis 22:17 and 18. He told Abraham, again, 900 years before David, I will greatly bless you. I'll greatly multiply your seed, singular, as the stars of the heaven and the sand which is on the seashore. In your seed, singular, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. So in this one descendant, all the descendants, all the people, all the tribes, all the culture groups, everybody on earth will be blessed through this one person, and his name is Jesus. Verse 14, go back to verse 14. He says, I'm going to be a father to him. So he's talking about Solomon and Jesus. And he'll be a son to me. When he commits iniquity, I will correct him with the rod of men and the strokes of the sons of men. But my loving kindness shall not depart from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed before you. Verse 16, your house, your kingdom shall endure before me forever. Your throne shall be established forever. So Solomon, he said, the Father is going to say to him, you're my son, I'm going to use you to build the temple. But there's going to be one come one day, he'll say, this is my son whom I'm well pleased, the Father of the Lord Jesus Christ, the New Testament tells us. Verse 14 says he's going to commit iniquity. Solomon's going to commit iniquity. And we know the throne is going to be divided in Israel, and Israel's going to be dispersed, and they're going to be pushed out among all the nations. They're going to be taken by the rod of men. They're going to come and capture Israel and disperse them all over. And so he promised him that's going to happen. But it's the rod of men that beat Jesus at the cross and bruised him because the Father decided. He's the ultimate fulfillment. Isaiah 53:5, 1,000 years was said before Christ came, or 700 years before Christ came. It said, he will be bruised for our iniquity. It's by his stripes we're healed. He'll be beaten by rods. He'll be bruised and beaten and whipped. So he says, there'll be one named Solomon. He'll be foolish. He'll lose the kingdom. But there'll be one who will become our iniquity, and he'll be beaten by the rods of men because I give him for you. Verse 16, this house, this throne shall reign forever. John 1:14, the Word became flesh and dwelt. That word dwelt means tabernacled. It means build a house. He will build a house among us. The glory as the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. Can you imagine? Every Jew had to go over these prophecies over and over and over again. And all of a sudden there's this carpenter, and he's standing in front of you, and he says, the house of God is here. No wonder they hated him. No wonder they rejected him. They were looking for one like David. They wanted all their enemies killed. They wanted to learn the 7 ways to have a Good Friday. They wanted to be rich. They invented the prosperity gospel. I mean, we have it in America now, but it comes and goes. It comes and goes. But they invented it, and they said, if God loves you, you'll be rich, and you'll have good days, and all your enemies will be defeated. And Jesus comes along, and he says, that's not true. But the house of God is standing in front of you. And then he looks at the temple that they idolized, and he says, there's not going to be a stone left soon on that temple. In 70 AD, Titus will come and he'll wipe out Jerusalem, and he'll kill over 1 million Jews. Josephus said the blood ran 3 foot thick in the streets. Jesus looks at them and says, that temple's going to be gone. That temple was temporary. But the temple of God is standing in front of you. And they said, no. That's our temple. That's where God manifests himself. He said, no, God manifests himself in me. The temple's not a building, it's a person. The temple's a person. The rest is not that you get away from your enemies and everything's great all the time. The rest is me, that I will overcome your enemies through me. I'm the rest. I'm the temple. So back to verse 18. So what does David do? Go to 18. He says, after all this is said to him, David goes out on the balcony. You remember, he says, I'm going to do great things for God. God said, no, you're not. This is what I've done. This is what I'm doing. This is what I will do. So David gets it in verse 18. He says, David the king went in. He went in and he sat before the Lord. And he said, who am I, O Lord? Who am I, O Lord? And what is my house that you brought me this far? And yet this is insignificant in your eyes, O Lord God, because you have spoken of the house of your servant concerning the distant future. He says, I'm not even significant in this. He starts to realize, you just told me more than I ever thought or could imagine that the son of David would come through me. Who am I? Who am I that you would bless me in this way? And then he says, this is the custom of all man. Custom means instruction, if you want to write that in. It's easier to translate instruction. In other words, this should be the instruction of every person. And I'm not going to get to those last 3 points. I don't want to do those right now. I want to do something different. Would you give me that for just a minute? I think the Lord wants to say something different. And if it's not of the Lord, I'll come back next week and apologize. So I think it's of the Lord. I just want to stay with the text for a minute. David goes out and he says, I need to do something for God because he's done so much for me. And God says, you need to get that out of your heart. And how does he get it out of his heart? He saturates him like rain with promises. There's something to be said there about parenting. There's something to be said there about loving one another and strengthening one another when we fall. And he just rains on him with promises. Boom, 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 boom. Every word in here, God, he would have known from Abraham. I mean, he's the father of Israel. He's the father of the people. He's the father of faith. And God says, hey, I'm just going to rain on you for a while. And he just saturates him with promise after promise after promise after promise. And Jesus will come later, right? And he'll say, if you abide in me and abide in my word, if you'll just be saturated in me and in my word, he said, you can have the life you meant to have. He said, it's that simple and it's that hard. He said, you don't need a second baptism. You don't need to go see a prophet. You don't need to go get baptized in the Jordan River. You don't need to be baptized as an infant. You don't need to turn around 3 times and whistle Dixie. You need to come to me and abide in me and in my word. And the people said, it's not enough. And they say today, it's not enough. His sufficiency is not enough. And David, unfortunately, is going to say that because Bathsheba's coming. Bathsheba's coming. And God lovingly comes to him and he says, if you would receive the grace that I have for you, and he saturates him, he rains over him, he pours down rain. And he says, if I'm not enough, David, nothing will ever be enough. You'll chase everything with a skirt. You'll look for every job. You'll look for every person to give you attention. You will not be able to stand being quiet or being alone. Nothing will ever be enough, David. And so he just pours down grace on him. 2 words, 2 phrases, if you'll write them down. Number 1, he gratefully humbled him. He became gratefully humbled. David became gratefully humbled in God's grace. Unfortunately, it doesn't last with David. David is a man after God's own heart, but he never gets the maturity he needs. He never stays connected to God and his word long enough to get over some of his sins. And I know it confuses people, and it confuses me for a long time, but you got to separate the two. He had a passion for God. He didn't have the maturity for God. And one of the things that David keeps doing, as you read through this reading plan, David keeps listening to himself instead of God. But at this point in his life, he becomes gratefully humbled. And he looks at God and he says, who am I? Now, religious people would never say that. Religious people would say, of course God saved me. I got baptized. Of course God saved me. I'm a good person. Of course I'm going to go to heaven. God knows I try. Of course God saved me. He knows I went through the 12 steps, 10 steps, 15 things. I jumped through the hoops. Grace people look at God and say, why me? Why me? Why would you save me? A liar, a murderer, adulterer, a drug addict, a filthy man, why? Why me and why not him? Why does she still struggle with that and I don't? Grace people are knocked off their socks. They live differently. They're gratefully humbled by God's grace, and they treat people with humility and with grace because it's in their heart. It's in their heart. I mean, you look at this week. They lay off about 600 people, 575 people, something like that at GE. How many of those people you think sat down this week? Was it on Friday? How many of them you think sat down and said, now, let me think, what is that, how to have 7 good ways to have a good Friday? What's the 7 steps to have a good day? Not one person did that. The only people who talk that way are preachers are too lazy to get in the Word and hear from God and preach what He says. And I did it for years. So I'm not throwing any stones. But nobody in disease or death or loss of a loved one who says goodbye to a wife or buries a child or loses their job or can't financially make it or whatever it might be, nobody sits down and says, now what were those 7 keys to have a great Friday? Get out of bed. No. You better, in the moment, be gratefully humbled by the promises and glory of God, or it won't work. It won't work. He's gratefully humbled by God's grace. And second, he wants to go to the nations. He wants to go to the nations. He says, this is the instruction of all mankind. He goes in and he sits down and he starts thinking, he says, who am I? And then he says, God, this is instruction for every person on the earth. I want to go to the nations. He gets gratefully humbled and he says, I can't stand it. I can't stand it that you've blessed me and graced me and there's people out there that don't know. There's people out there that don't know. They don't know you this way. And he says, this is the instruction for all mankind. This is the instruction for my neighbors and my family and for everybody. And you look at David's life right here till Bathsheba, he is just passionate with Christ, with the Lord. He is writing psalms, he is singing, he is walking, and while this grace humbles him, he's like he'd talk to a wooden Indian. He don't care who it is. He wants them to know. You can't have enough classes to get people to evangelize. You can't get up and beat people over the head. I've learned the hard way. You can't. You've got to have people who are gratefully humbled by God's grace that it's bursting of the seams and they can't be quiet. Like Paul said, he said, I am compelled, consumed, driven by your love. I can't stand it that other people don't know you the way I do. And so he was willing to risk and be rejected and be stoned and shipwrecked and beaten and all the things he went through because he said, I can't stand it that they don't know you the way I do. So the precursor to that is that you have to know him in a way that makes you want to burst to where you say, I can't stand it. Does everybody understand that? I just was reading this text this week, and I had a lot of plans. And about Friday or Saturday, it was like, I felt like David, like I was on the balcony, and I said, Lord, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And the Lord said, no, you're not. And so I said, okay, I'll do what you say. So I get up, I hopefully have presented well enough. I just wanted you to hear this. Be gratefully humbled by God's grace. That's the hub and the will, and that's the hub. Be gratefully humbled by God's grace, and all the other spokes will fall in line one way or the other. One way or the other, they'll fall in line. He said, if you seek first my kingdom, Jesus comes along. He says, if you seek first the kingdom, my righteousness, all these other things will be added to you as well. And in Luke 1, when Jesus comes, he says this. He says that he came to be the fulfillment. He says, Luke 1 on your screen, Jesus will be great. He'll be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. So he is the fulfillment of everything we just read. Jesus of Nazareth, who was born in a trough, who was born to an unmarried woman, who was a carpenter's son, who has over 300 prophecies about him. He's the one. He's the temple. He's the rest. He will be on the throne of his father David. He will be on the throne of the universe and the heavens and the earth. He will be on the throne. He will judge the living and the dead. 33, and he will reign over the house of Jacob. How long? Forever. His kingdom will have no end. No wonder he walked around people and said to them, come to me. Come to me. If you're weary, if you're heavy laden, if you're tired of trying, if you're tired of your sins, if you're tired of your guilty conscience, if you're tired of all the stuff, come to me. I will give you rest. Has that ever happened in your life where you've said, I'm coming to him, nothing else, him alone. I surrender my life to you. I come. Has it ever happened? I hope it has. Because until then, you will chase everything under the sun to get that rest, and it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough. Take heaven and hell out of it. Take heaven and hell out of it. Just talking about now. The forever part's great. Just talk about now. You'll chase everything under the sun. It'll never be enough. You were created for him. Father, as the Bakers come forward and as we pray for them and we celebrate that they've been with us, I want to ask in this building, right here, for the people I love and serve that you gave me to walk with, I pray that every person in this building, before they leave, they will know that they are at rest in Jesus Christ, that they are no longer your enemy, they're no longer at odds with you, they're no longer running from you, but they're at rest in Christ Jesus. I pray that they will know that the temple of God was the body of the Lord Jesus Christ, the one that was crucified, dead, and buried, and has risen from the grave. I pray we will know you as the risen Lord. Father, we're all in agreement right now as we pray for Lance and Ruth and the boys. We pray that their rest has been good, and as they have one more week to rest this week and they leave out next week for Asia, I pray that they will rest in you this week. They'll be strengthened in you. And then when you put them back on the field, no matter what comes their way, I pray they'll be able to rest in you, that circumstances nor people will take away their rest, their enjoyment, their satisfaction, their peace in you. I pray that we'll be found faithful to pray for them, love them, send them gifts, to remember them constantly. We pray for their boys, that they would love you with all their heart. They would rest in you. And I pray that you'll use them, the whole family. They will be like what David just said, that he can't stand it. He wants to go to all mankind. I thank you that you've laid it on their heart to go to a place in the world that needs the gospel. So overflow in their life to other people there with the gospel of Jesus Christ. But Lord, remind us that we are here. We're here because you kept us here. You put us here. You planted us here. Let us go to our neighbors, our friends, those that we run with, walk with, live with, go to the grocery store with, go to school with. May we be Christ-like to them. May we share with them who you are. Lord, as we get ready to leave, I pray we'll greet one another. I pray that people will come up and greet the bakers here up front. But I do pray this with all my heart, that we'd be a people that greet Erie with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And God's people said, amen. Amen. Take a moment and come greet them up front if you want, and God bless.